Welcome to the Digg podcast. I'm your host, Caroline O'Neill, and I am bringing to you today Digg highlights. So, we have interviewed over 160 people, and there's highlight moments in every conversation, but there's a few that really stand out. I'm bringing to you today just a little highlight of a conversation that I had with CEO of Argento, Mr. Pete Boyle. What a man. So many things that he said in my conversation with him at that live event way back. Feels like a lifetime ago, but almost 3 years ago in the Galgore Resort and Spa at our live podcast. I spoke to him and he really shares the highs, the lows, and he's so honest. That's what I love about Pete. He doesn't hold back. He tells you how he rose to the heights and also had so many challenges along the way. And that's how you learn when people share things like that, isn't it? So today on this highlight, you're going to hear how he had to pivot and he had to pivot quick. And I suppose there's a message in it, like not to put all your eggs in one basket. That's what I took from it really whenever he was talking. And whenever you know things are going south, you got to act quick. And that's the thing about Pete. He's not afraid to take a risk. So I hope you enjoy this Digg highlight. You talked about taking your eye off the ball a wee bit when it came to the trends of jewellery.
Yeah, so I think as your business, you can set a lot of rules that are not rules. They're just rules you're tying yourself up with. So we became a real market leader in a new sector, which was silver jewelry. And that nearly damaged us because we were defining ourselves by the term silver jewelry. The jewelry had to be made of silver. And so we were sourcing all over the world. I'd fly to Mexico, I'd fly Poland, Indonesia, India. We were having a great time. There was a new sector. We were all making money from all over the world. We'd go into Mexico, big party in Tesco, we'd all buy jewelry and head off. It was great fun. But we'd defined ourselves by silver. And then I was at a wedding, a family wedding, and everybody in the room was getting discount in my shop. And none of the women were wearing my jewelry. So I was like thinking, hold on. And I happened to lean over and said, where did you get that necklace? And she was going, oh, it's Pilgrim.
Ever Pilgrim?
And,
Does everything
it was a big flowery thing. And I just panicked and I realized everybody was wearing Pilgrim. And because Pilgrim didn't market themselves to silver jewelry, they were tending to sell into ladies' boutiques and chemists and things like that. And it was costume jewelry. So back in the 80s, costume jewelry was people brought out in a rash. You would remember, you're too young, obviously, but people's ears would, because of nickel. So nickel was the problem. And Pilgrim had realized they could make jewelry with no nickel. And so we hadn't realized people were buying silver mainly because it didn't bring you out in a rash. So it was affordable and it was high quality and it didn't have any nickel in it. But Pilgrim had cracked making costume jewelry with no nickel. Well, I went and we had to go to sale. So we had like 1.6 million pound of stock. We went on the 8-month sale. We sold everything that we dumped our stock. We got our stock down to like 300,000. We were in sale for 8 months. We wanted rid of everything. We got Pilgrim. I talked to her and she supplied us. So we became their largest client then in the UK. But we knew we needed to get costume jewelry. So I discovered that there was a trade exhibition in Hong Kong that sold costume jewelry. We flew over to Hong Kong, and then we really nailed it. And I met.
That's another story that you told me about.
So we met two Irish guys at that used to be street traders on O'Connell Street Bridge. They had both gone open silver stores in New Zealand and Australia. And in Hong Kong, I mean, the guys were saying about sourcing. Somebody was asking a question about sourcing. Sourcing's a problem because as you try to drive down the price, you inevitably drive up the volume. So that becomes that's the trade-off. Do you go for volume at low price or do you buy what you need at a slightly higher price? And we always were aiming for volume. So I was saying earlier, our goal was always to be buying out the factory door. So wholesalers hated me because I was looking at a wholesaler thinking, you're charging me a fiver, mate, and I know you're paying £1 for it. I was immediately thinking, where did he get it? And if you're in the wholesale business, don't leave suppliers' labels on your boxes. So because we'd order goods from somebody, open the box, and there was the name of the factory in the box, So that was the last thing we bought off your man. We were now phoning the factory. So we sourced stuff direct, and that then we split the orders. The guys would take quantity to Australia and New Zealand. So we formed a little buy-in group We'd order 120, one colour, one item, split it up. I'd take 60, 30 would go to New Zealand, 30 would go to Australia, and that allowed us to buy the volumes out of the factories in China.
I thought that was genius in a way. I heard that. I was like, did I not think of that when I was doing children's, or like, then I was like, oh, probably would have been rules, but then you probably didn't listen to the rules. But the buying, like a buying group to try and reach the quantities, I thought that was deadly. Like,
Yeah, well, it also forced you to open more stores, so you would then go and open, like, and when we would open, I think at that stage we were sitting on about 12 stores. And every time we took on a person to work in head office, I had to open a shop to pay their wages. That was roughly the maths, so that person in head office wasn't generating any direct revenue. I had to pay their wages. And we knew the maths around each shop to make profit, but we knew once we had a whole team at head office, say marketing, handling stock, pricing, ticketing, purchasing. Every time we added a body at head office, we opened a shop. So that took us to about 22 stores, So again, we were just constantly expanding.
and you talked to me about the fact that wasn't always easy. Like, I can't even imagine, but it did get to like 54 stores then, was it at the
Took
end?
it right up to 60 stores. But that was that buying group. So Michael, about a year and a half after I'd met them in Hong Kong, pulled out a little bead and said, my sales have travelled in Australia, and it was Pandora beads. And
Anybody wearing Pandora in the audience? Is there? Yes, there you go.
so we're still selling it. Although we're not their big partner anymore, but they bought us out now. But my sales hadn't trebled. I remember thinking, God, my sales haven't trebled. But our initial reaction was, we'll make our own beads. We'll make an Argento bead. We knew all the factories. We went and got our own beads made. We packaged it all up, and we did that for about 12 months. And I went back again, and Michael's still sitting in Australia, and he says, my sales have doubled. And I remember thinking, I've got this wrong. I just, like a switch, and I thought, I've got this wrong. I need to get this brand. So I was in Bangkok, and I went back to the hotel, and I had a few pints, and I think I was on the phone for 3 hours to this guy trying to get him to supply my stores. And then he said to me, Pete, you're very enthusiastic. He said, I'm going to hang up, and I'm going to ring some people in the industry and check, if you're good to do business with. So we had a thing where we always paid people on time. So, and we'd pay you early if we could. And so I used to say to the accountant, I had one accountant who came from the British Army, and he had been working in their bars in Northern Ireland buying beer for the bars. And I remember my supplier rang me and he said, Pete, is there something wrong with your business? He says, we haven't had money off you in 3 months. And I said, I don't know what's wrong, Paul. Like, we always pay on time. I'll ring. So I go to the office to the new accountant, and I says, Paul Kennedy says he didn't get paid. He says, oh, we never pay any bill till we get the solicitor's letter.
Oh,
I was like, I says, well, you don't do that here, bit. I said, the money that's at the bank account's not our money. It belongs to your suppliers. You just have to pay. Just keep paying. Eventually we'll get some money after everybody's been paid, but you're kidding yourself if you think that money belongs to our company. It just belongs to our suppliers. So when Pandora phoned all our suppliers, he phoned me back 15 minutes later and he said, well, the one thing I've learned, he says, I'll get paid. He says, everybody says, Pete Boyle will pay you, and he'll pay you on 3 days. If he's got the money, you'll get paid. So I got Pandora.
so I asked you about that actually before we jump into Pandora. I said to you, what scares you the most? And you said debt.
Well, we didn't like debt, but the one thing that out of that was your reputation. So we protected our reputation. You don't get a second crack at reputation. If you blow it, it's a long way back. People trust, and a good reputation is vital. I'd say protect it with your life, because it's something you need as you go forward. You do not know when someone you'll need help. You might need help, from a supplier. You may need extended credit at some stage, but if you've been paying them on time for 3 or 4 years, that extended credit won't be a problem. So
I told you it would be a highlight moment listening to Pete. And I think there's so much to learn from what he says. I always repeat his words. That sentence where he says, I know you're charging me a favour, and I know you're buying that for a pound. Mate, that always makes me laugh, but it's so true. Sourcing is such a big thing now for brands, and Pete is the king of that. So if you want to listen to the full episode, it's a meaty one. He doesn't hold back. You can get the link in the show notes. And that was recorded during our live podcast way back in 2020, well, almost 3 years ago. So we hope to do another live very soon. Thank you for listening to our Dig highlights. We will see you again next week. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you are watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on Apple and Spotify, hit that follow button.